Now, what about merit scholarships? You know, are they considered financial aid, and what do you tell students who want to apply for this type of assistance?
Merit aid is very important.
Excuse me,
to
if you could hold the
families.
microphone closer
Oh,
so
I'm
everybody
sorry.
can hear you.
Okay, merit aid is very important to most families, especially for those who feel they're not going to qualify for financial aid. The merit aid is typically based on a quality that the student has that the college wants. And so it may be at one particular college that your child may qualify for a merit scholarship based on their athletic ability, or on the fact that they can play a musical instrument that's really needed in the orchestra. More likely and more prevalent are merit scholarships based on academic performance in high school. Sometimes it's strictly based on SAT scores, but that's becoming less likely. Colleges are looking more holistically at students and looking not only at SAT scores if they happen to be an SAT required school, but also looking at rank in class in high school, the GPA, the honors programs or AP courses that they might have taken in high school. Colleges are looking to make themselves affordable to all income levels, and one way to do that is by rewarding students for their performance in high school, because we expect that students who've done very well in high school will also do very well in college.
Do all schools award these sorts of scholarships and merit scholarships?
Not all schools do give merit aid, and I think as a rule of thumb, those schools who say that they meet 100% of need and give only need-based aid would not give merit scholarships. And there are quite a few of those in the country, but more prevalent are schools who not only give need-based aid, but also award merit scholarships at some level. And it can range from some schools that only give merit scholarships. We have one here in Boston that works on the talent of a student rather, and would give those awards based on their musical ability, their acting talent, etc. And it's portfolio based, whereas other schools will give smaller amounts of merit scholarship, a percentage of the budget they have set aside for awarding funds to students. And I think it can range from 10% of a budget. I've seen some as high as 50%. But there's a broad range, and the amounts can vary as well. I think when families are trying to figure out whether or not they would get merit aid at a school or what their chances are, you can go to some of the rankings that are available. I'm sure someone will talk about that in a little while.
I think so.
And see where your child falls in the spectrum of the averages at that particular school. If your child exceeds the averages at that school, maybe they'll get a merit scholarship there. It's worth trying. But if your child is at that average or below that average, then probably they would not be a candidate for merit scholarships at that school.
Mm-hmm. I know when my son said that he was sick, he couldn't go to school, and I told him that he was an actor. I didn't know that was probably a good prerequisite for a merit scholarship.
There you go.
You're acting, go to school. Also, show of hands quickly. How many people in this room have seniors in high school right now? Okay. This question is aimed at you, and this answer is aimed at you. If your child is a senior, is it too late to apply?
If you have a child who's a senior in high school, I hope you've already filed the free application for federal student aid, called the FAFSA, and perhaps the profile form, which is required by many private colleges and universities. If you haven't done it yet, then I would suggest tonight's the night.
You have a long day ahead of you. Also, with Pell Grants on the ropes, and we'll talk more about this as the federal government cuts back, what do you see as the possible effects of this going forward? And I know we're going to talk a lot more about this, what the government is doing and what's happening to the future of these types of grants and scholarships.
As you know, the country's not in a very good situation financially, and Congress is looking to cut back funds wherever it can and wherever it's appropriate. I guess I would argue that higher education cutbacks are not particularly appropriate for the long-term health of our country. However, on the table right now is a proposal by the House to reduce Pell Grants, the maximum Pell Grant, from what it is now, $5,550 a year to closer to $4,700, so a reduction of about $800. And the president, in his budget for the new fiscal year, is proposing that Pell Grants stay level funded by making some changes within the structure of Pell that would save money in order to shore up the maximum amount available. And I think that's probably the best it's going to get, what the president's proposing. But what's on the table for the House right now would be devastating to students who are currently in school and will probably discourage others from attending because of the levels. I had heard yesterday at a meeting in Washington that for every $100 increase in the Pell Grant, that is an increase of 0.25% in the percentage of low-income students who attend college. So Pell Grant is the basis of all federal financial aid, and as its cornerstone, it's really important and it is effective.
Okay, thank you so much. We're going to obviously talk much more about that. Dr. Joseph Moore joining us again. Thank you so much, the president of Lesley University, and it's a pleasure to have you here today. And I know that you were a dynamic part of our last business breakfast on education. And when we talk about paying for college, and I know you wanted to talk about this, I understand that we differentiate between the price of college and the cost of college, price and cost. Tell me about that differentiation, which I believe a lot of parents don't even realize.
Well, it's related to what Eileen was just talking about, how it's important for any family to go beyond what we call the sticker price and try to figure out what is the actual cost. And it used to be dominantly an issue, if you will, with the private institutions. And Jack, it'd be interesting to get your comments there in terms of whether that's starting to affect the public side as well. As Jack talks about UMass adding more financial aid, in essence, it's a reduction in what the sticker price is to what the actual cost is. So we've got these bundles of financial aid. So if you think about the first bundle being what's the institutional aid that may be available, especially at a private institution, as Eileen was talking about, both need-based aid and merit-based aid. Secondly, then you go to the grants. Unfortunately, when we talk about financial aid right now, lots of times people jump right to loans. And I think that's just an indicator of how difficult the financial environment is, that we don't spend more time on the grants. Very needy students are eligible for a Pell Grant. So that's, to me, what comes in following whatever you find out about institutional aid. There are some other smaller federal grants that you should be familiar with. Some of those may be on the chopping blocks or modified through this budgetary process that's going on right now. Then you get to, quite often, state grants, equally under pressure in many of the state budgetary sessions that are going on in legislatures right now. And then there are a whole slew of what I would call private grants, everything from the local Lions, Kiwanis Club, that students in high school may be getting some awards at. So we begin with trying to think, what is the grant capacity to offset whatever that sticker price is to bring that cost down? And then two other things I think that we don't talk about enough, but we have concerns about before you get to loans. One is work. Many of us, when we went to college, we worked. But through the college work-study program, there were limits on how much we could work. And so we might work generally about 8 to 10 hours a week to make up some spending money on other things. What we worry about now is some students are working too many hours while they're full-time. And this is true for traditional students as well as adult students that are going back. But work should be a component, from my point of view, for many students, but if they can limit the hours. And then finally, you get into the loans. And there's been a change in that in the last few years. Lesley and a number of other institutions now participate in what's called the direct lending program through the federal government, and that may be something we talk about in terms of what loans are available now and at what rates and what do we think is going to happen there. So we try and work all that down to get the reduction between sticker price and actual cost.
You know, Joe, obviously this morning's event is about getting into college, but if we can drop back a bit, about just a few yards here, and look at choosing the right college, and I know that you wanted to talk about this, that it's very, very important that students and families aim correctly. understand what they're getting into and what sort of college and university experience they have. Is there an issue about college retention once these young people are accepted?
I think there's a relationship directly between those two topics, which is what kind of institution is right for a young woman or a young man. And the way I link up that with retention and also the cost issue is as follows, that I think it's wise to try to frame the cost issue as an issue about value. And value is a simple fraction. The numerator are the perceived benefits, and the denominator are the cost. So if you divide those benefits by the cost, you get value. So if you think you're going out to buy a car or a used car, or if you're looking at a home or an apartment, you're constantly engaged in this valuation of what are the perceived benefits versus what you can afford. And I think too often what we do is we spend time on the denominator and we don't help families think about the numerator, which is there are many, many different types of institutions that will provide different, sort of different emphases of value. So are you looking for a large experience? Many students want to be at a large university. Some want to be at a medium-sized, a smaller one. There's perceptions around that. But also academic quality, and then what's wrapped around that academic quality. Internships, study abroad, opportunities for leadership. What kind of relationship do you sense, not just between faculty and students, which we'll talk about a lot, but among students, and how diverse is that experience? What kind of area do you want to live in? So all of this goes into it, I think, in terms of trying to line out as clearly as can be what's the numerator that you look for. And I think that match helps lead someone into the more detailed conversation about the denominator of cost.
Do you think that the economic downturn has limited those choices and has limited students' experiences on campus because there's this emphasis that, you know, they may have to work many, many more hours?
You know, I think it has dramatically with adult learners, which is, you know, not a group we're really focused on here today. And increasingly, I would say that's true for especially working class kids who generally are looking at community colleges, regional universities, and I think the greatest cost shift that's going on has been, if you will, from the public till to the individual responsibility here. And it's a trend that really concerns me because of the unequal opportunity that is resulting from that, which we're starting to see more and more. So I think that's a real issue of concern and maybe something that people here may want to make some comments or have a conversation about.
I think we will. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.